a lot of people can put a leader of a company on this kind of mantle, but ultimately it takes everybody. No matter how talented you are or I am, we're nothing without our teams.
Man, so true. Welcome to Money Market, the Bank of Tampa podcast. We highlight the businesses, expert business advice, local economy, and points of interest in the Tampa Bay market. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And make sure you share this episode with a friend or colleague. I am your host, Owen LaFave, the Pinellas County Market President for the Bank of Tampa, Tampa Bay's oldest and largest community bank. Today's guest knows a thing or two about building a business from scratch and bringing happiness to the dinner table. We're joined today by David Habib, the founder of Yo Mama Foods. He launched in 2017 with the mission of bringing healthier, high-quality, shelf-stable pasta sauces, salad dressings, and barbecue sauces to consumers everywhere. He sold millions of jars worldwide. He's now distributing to over 25,000 stores worldwide from Clearwater, Florida. David, thanks for joining us on Money Market.
Oh, and thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, excited to have you and excited to have your product here. It may be some of the most delicious sauces that are on the store shelves. But I have to start with, all right, so with a name like Yo Mama,
yes,
do you have a bunch of canned like Yo Mama jokes like ready to go to fire at will?
Working on it, yeah. So really, I think when we launched the business, consumer packaged goods was so boring. So when I was thinking about branding and marketing, we wanted something that was fun, catchy, and something that customers wouldn't forget. So
it's definitely unforgettable. But so how did you land on the name? What was that creative thought process like?
Ultimately, Owen, no one makes better food than your own mama. So
that's right.
That was really the idea around it. But ultimately, I was working in corporate America, working for Deloitte at that time. And I was eating out a lot. I just wasn't really feeling well. And when I wasn't eating out, I was eating store-bought sauce and getting some pretty bad heartburn. And that was really the idea is, I started to go down this rabbit hole in consumer packaged goods, started to realize that what was in the American pantry was not what my mom cooked. So growing up, for me, mom was such an amazing cook. She, made all her sauces and dressings fresh, and family dinner was a non-negotiable piece of our day.
Right,
so
required attendance.
Exactly. And, I grew up with, being quite spoiled with just great sauces and then dressings. And then all of a sudden I was buying store-bought ones and just wasn't feeling well. So I started to look at what was inside of these items and starting to see things like different acids and all this, potassium sorbate.
Stuff you didn't know what it was. Right?
Correct. Yeah. And that was really the idea is how do we clean up the consumer packaged goods aisle? How do we do it with a fun, catchy brand? And, how do we tie it back home to mom?
Man, that's quite a pivot. But so the recipes they're not mom's recipes.
They're actually grandma's recipes.
They are? Okay.
So my grandma made her pasta sauces using fresh tomatoes, fresh basil, fresh onion, fresh garlic. She never added sugar, and her preservative was actually wine. And that's exactly what we do today. There's no alcohol in the actual finished product. All of the alcohol cooks off, but it breaks down the acidity. But ultimately, that's exactly how we produce it today.
Okay, but the preservative is the wine. So basically today there is wine, but once you cook it, it cooks off.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, but your family's from Egypt originally?
Egypt, yeah.
And then moved to France.
Yeah, so mom moved to France,
okay.
And then dad moved to Ohio.
Okay.
Cleveland was my family's kind of Ellis Island back in the 1980s. And my mother came here in the mid-80s. My father had a job interview at Baycare in, I think, 1982. It was in February, and it was snowing in Cleveland. He flew into Tampa Airport and was like, I'm never going back. So,
That's a good move.
Yeah, so he relocated here. They got married in Ohio. They moved here in the early 90s permanently, and then my mother had to redo her residency when she moved to the U.S. So they went to Arizona, Texas, and then ultimately settled back here in 1993.
Oh wow, man, that's quite the journey.
Yeah.
So I guess the culinary side of things, was that crafted by your grandmother in France?
Yeah, so grandma has mostly Mediterranean background. So she's half Lebanese, half Egyptian, but she got married in 1949, and her and my grandfather had 13 children.
Wow.
So she was cooking for 15 every single day. But ultimately, it's just crafted around fresh ingredients, and that was really the approach. Followed passed on to all of her children, and then my mother living in France for over 10 years, had a great culinary background as well, and that ultimately led us to where we are today.
Now, did your mom teach you, I guess, the family recipes, or was it something that she just took care of, and then you later were like, okay,
Yeah,
I need to know what you're cooking.
my mom taught me how to be a really good eater, but
Right?
I wasn't very good at the cooking side,
Okay.
because she always did such a great job.
Yeah.
But actually, surprisingly, my father later on in life has turned out to be, I won't say, but sometimes an even better cook than a
Is that
mom.
right? Okay.
Yeah,
Do you tell mom that?
I don't. No,
Don't do that.
no, exactly.
But now you spent some time in Uruguay as well, right?
Yeah. So I studied
Or
in
Uganda. Uganda.
Uganda. Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like,
Yeah.
how did that happen?
Yeah, so I thought I wanted to be a dentist. All of my family is in the medical profession. I did a medical mission trip in Uganda, and part of that medical mission trip was I actually had to pull teeth. I had to extract teeth
Okay.
with a dentist. So after doing that for a couple of days, I realized that being a dentist was not for me, and ultimately I decided to pursue different types of entrepreneurial
Probably
ideas.
probably changed your dental hygiene approach quickly too.
100%. Yeah.
Don't miss a day flossing.
Yeah. So it was a wonderful experience. It was my first kind of trip that really exposed me to just how good we have it here in the U.S. And I think it definitely opened up my eyes. So from there, I was lucky and fortunate to have other travel experiences when I was in college.
But you started a business there.
I did. Yes.
You did.
Yeah, I
Was
did.
that your very first business?
Oh, you did good research.
Yeah, well, thanks. I try. So,
I love it.
So Molly's Beats.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in Uganda, I met this wonderful entrepreneur and really mother to her area. Her name was Molly Aloe, and she actually took recycled paper, magazine paper, and found out ways to make it into really beautiful jewels. So she made necklaces, she made earrings. So yes, I did. That was my first entrepreneurial, I guess, journey where I started selling beads for her. Well, we called it Molly's Beads, and we started that in it would have been 2008 maybe, but ultimately did that for about 2 years. Raised almost $20,000 for her, sent that back, and then she was able to start a community center where she ultimately taught others how to create beads.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess the selling. I mean, were you going so far as to try to find or were you wholesaling, or were you just going to farmers markets, or what did that process look
So
like?
I guess that was my first good marketing experience of understanding who your target market is, and for us it was moms. So I think we used to host things at different parties. We would go to different Christmas events, and ultimately moms and their own networks kind of spread the word and help us to grow our business and sell out of her beads multiple times.
Wow, I know it's an incredible story. So, what lessons did you take from that experience? I mean,
Yeah.
you applied any of those to Yo Mama?
Absolutely. I think it was an important piece of that was when really the school of hard knocks started, right? So, growing up in school, they don't really teach you about sales or about rejection, right? And I think no matter what a company's mission is, you have to be comfortable with being able to ultimately speak about it, but you also have to be comfortable with a lot of people saying no, right?
Sure.
And I think that was the first time, where I had a great mission, I had a great product, and then, ultimately, I had a good support network, but we still had people who weren't interested or who were saying no. And I think that's a really important lesson that I was fortunate to learn early on. Is that the old saying of you get 99 no's for one yes is pretty accurate.
So the no's don't devastate you any
Exactly
longer.
right. Nope. Oh yeah.
So you had mentioned, I interrupted you, but
Yeah.
so you had other college experiences. You traveled to other places for college.
I did, yeah. So I was able to teach in China for a semester.
Wow.
And then I studied in the south of France for 6 months, which was awesome. And that was really where I started to get more deeper into my love of eating and food as well. But really in Europe, it's a much different approach towards food. Everything is all clean and natural there. There's not really any type of preservatives allowed in their diet, so you just naturally feel better. And I think Americans who go there, see that and also feel that. You can eat kind of whatever you want, but there's more activity towards walking, and they're not loading things with all the sugar and sodium. So that was a good experience. I think that taught me about the simplicity of food, and how we don't have to overcomplicate things. It also showed me what beautiful packaging does too. So you go into Europe, and every brand there has some cool packaging. So when I was
So
exploring,
that kind of laid the groundwork
exactly, yeah, exactly, because I think in the U.S., especially in the pasta sauce aisle, everything is so cluttered and everything looks the same, and ultimately we want it to be different. So we launched with the only white label at that time. We launched with a white cap, and that type of again, just making things simple. Breaking things down and not
I mean, very simple, but
overcomplicating.
clean and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So
like
clean.
the food.
Yeah, that's right. So clean on the outside, clean on the inside, easy to understand, fun and catchy brand name. That was, really mama's secret.
So, I mean, being so simple but yet, and I feel like I've heard you say, I mean, they'll last on the shelf for like 2 or 3 years,
Yes,
and that's just from the wine.
correct. Yeah.
So, I guess why is it default of like, U.S. food producers to, go with all the other ascorbic acids and all the other typical, preservatives?
Cost. Yeah,
Cost.
yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, we're not a cheaper sauce on the shelf. We're a more premium brand, but that's because we use clean and fresh items that make you feel good. But really, Owen, I remember our last or our first production run. I had no experience in the food business, and to all the listeners out there, ignorance is definitely bliss. I think if I knew everything that I knew today about starting a food company, I would have never had the courage to ultimately do it. And I'm very grateful that I took the journey and that I didn't know what I know today. But to put it in perspective, our first jar of sauce that we produced, this is in 2017, before our launch on Mother's Day. Our cost of goods was $5.23.
Oh,
Again,
wow.
I had no idea about how the food business works, how there's a distributor, there's a broker, there's a retailer, all of that before it goes to the end customer, and everybody's taking a
Yeah,
margin.
you got a $15 jar of sauce. At the end of the day.
$18.
18. There
Exactly.
you go.
Yeah. So by the time it went on the grocery shelf, it was $18.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter how good the sauce is, no one's going to buy it for $18. So
Sure.
at that moment, going back to the school of hard knocks, I really had a choice. We can either grow and scale and figure out how we can get the unit economics to ultimately create a really better for you brand, or we can start to turn like everyone else and start to cheapen our ingredients, start to, think of ways to save on costs. And obviously that's not the path that we chose, but to answer your question, that's really what a lot of brands do. Is it all comes down to cost, and in order to have a viable product on the marketplace, you have to have a really strong cost of goods, because there's so many different layers between you and the end customer.
Yeah, there sure is. So, how many jars was your first production run?
It was 84 cases.
Okay.
I remember loading them up in my Hyundai Santa Fe, driving it from Orlando to my parents' dining room. And yeah, one by one, they were all 12 packs. I remember looking at 84 cases, aka my life savings, in pasta sauce, and figuring out, hey, I got to start selling.
And you did.
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so started in my parents' dining room, launched Mother's Day of 2017. Graduated from the dining room in about 2 months. Our first major account was actually Local Market in St. Pete, which is no longer around.
Yeah.
It was in the sundial, but shout out to a Bradley who gave us a shot. He's now at Mazzaro's Market,
Okay.
who also carries our sauce here. But ultimately, he gave us our first chance. So
Did he buy all 84 cases?
he bought 4 cases, and
Okay.
he made me do demos there, which was great.
All
So
right.
again, going back on the sales floor is so important. Getting customer feedback. I think at that time our label, our panels were too small for certain customers to ultimately read. So that's where you start to really iterate and start to make the item better and better. But that was really our start here locally. So we graduated from the dining room. moved on to Amazon in October of 2017. And at that point, we were operating out of a 300 square foot storage unit. Didn't have electricity there. Used to use my car lights to ultimately package at nighttime. But we had ten high schoolers who would come from Clearwater Central Catholic High School. They would come after their football practice and help me package boxes. December 2017, we became Amazon's #1 brand in pasta sauce.
No
So
kidding. Well, so what is that journey like? So
yeah,
how do you, I guess, number one, how do you get Amazon acceptance for people that aren't familiar with that process?
yes.
And then number two, how do you build that brand awareness on Amazon to become the #1 sauce?
Yeah, so Amazon, there's kind of three different ways to sell. You can either go direct, you could go through something called Vendor Central, or you can sell through a third party. We chose the route where we wanted to sell direct to Amazon through our brand and our business. We didn't want to rely on a third party. So it goes back to cold calling. I found out, who were the top 5 packaged goods sellers. How can I find kind of a Amazon partner, because I didn't know enough. And I knew that we needed someone to ultimately help us grow, and that led us to find Eric, who we still work with today. He was selling a competing brand of salad dressings, and I somehow convinced him to start working with
Did you
our
have salad
our
dressings
brand.
at the time?
We did,
You
yes,
did? Okay.
yeah. So our
Okay.
first products were 2 pasta sauces and 2 salad dressings.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, we had an Asian sesame and a honey balsamic.
Okay.
And we also had pancake mix and
Interesting. All right.
and oatmeal in our first kind of launch. But going back to School of Hard Knocks, it's very hard for a customer to position a brand in their head when you're trying to do too much too soon. So when you're selling sauces and dressings, and then all of a sudden you start selling dry goods, it doesn't really make sense. So we've obviously since pivoted from that. But on the Amazon side, in 2017, keto and low carb diets were very prominent.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what keto was, but keto is really just Atkins from 2001. But ultimately, we started to use SEO and started to understand how are customers finding us, and then how do we start bidding on those keywords. And this is really the wild west of Amazon. This is before
Yeah, I
COVID.
mean, you timed it right?
Correct. Yeah. So really, 2017 to 2020 were the building block years for selling food on Amazon, and then all of a sudden in 2020, COVID happened, and then that really expedited what was inevitably going to happen in online grocery. So instead of taking 5 years for customers to start selling items online, everybody had to start buying them. So that was really a big pivotal moment for us was 2020, but setting up the foundation blocks on Amazon in 2017 really enabled us to grow, and then that led us to launching into Whole Foods, and then
Now, was that because of the Amazon partnership? Was that
it
the kind of
was,
the
yeah.
natural
So
extension? Okay.
we were trying to get into Whole Foods for a long time, about a year. Went into the Florida region, did not have success. Went into the Southeast region, did not have success. Then Amazon acquired Whole Foods, went straight to the national buyer. Her name was Danielle, and she responded to my email quickly, gave us a meeting. But ultimately, the meeting was virtual at that time, and I knew how important it was to go face to face so that she can ultimately try it. So a buddy of mine flew up with me. This is maybe April or August of 2018. She tried the sauce, she loved it, and she launched us nationally, and that began the journey of our retail growth, and that was really the important building blocks for us, because omni-channel, because we had started online first, it gave us the ability to grow the brand in markets that we could never ship to, Alaska, Hawaii, Seattle, and then that also gave us the data to then go into these retail stores and to ultimately build from there. And then that omni-channel approach is really relevant today to any
Absolutely.
emerging brand. And you have so many different platforms like Instacart and DoorDash, and all these different retail media is really important. So everyone basically has their own ad platform now. So Kroger has it, Walmart has it, and that's how you ultimately win on the digital shelf. So actually today, in the parking lot when I was pulling in, we just got the Instacart 2024 rankings, and Yo Mama's is number 2.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
All right.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great accomplishment.
Yeah.
So, what about like startup capital? You had mentioned like your entire savings,
Yeah.
but to grow as fast as you've had, like where did the capital come into play? I mean, do you have outside investors that you brought in?
Yeah. So, very challenging.
Sure.
We didn't take any outside capital. It was hard to get a line of credit, as obviously we were a risky business. I was 24 when we
Banks
started.
don't like startups.
No, and then food is just very, very risky.
It
So,
is.
I think our recipe for success was really keeping overhead low. We didn't have a big headquarters. We didn't have a lot of team members at that time. I didn't take a salary for years. So that was a really important piece into growing the business. We never went down the private equity route or the
Good
venture
for you.
capital route. Would I do that again? Most likely not. It was very, very, very challenging to be able to finance the business. All these
I'm sure.
retailers pay you in 60, 90 days. You have to be able to sustain and build the inventory. You have to pay, obviously for your raw goods. So cash flow was very, very challenging. And then whenever you launch into a store, it's very exciting. And then all of a sudden you get hit with a slotting bill or a free fill bill. So the most expensive real estate in the world is actually the grocery shelf.
Store shelves, yeah.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to get 18 SKUs into a store, but you'll get billed back $500,000 as well. So it's a really challenging method of growth, is to not take outside capital, or to not have a strong line of credit from the bank. But those are things that we somehow worked through, and just keeping overhead low and just focus in on sales. That enabled us to start cash flowing the business, and our first year of profit was in 2020.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
But you also retained 100% ownership and control, and so I mean, there's something to absolutely be said for that. I mean, I know it's challenging, and you're on the other side of it now, and I'm sure going through it, it was stressful and maybe not fun at times.
Right.
Fun at times, but when you look back, I mean, it has to be. I mean, just a feeling of satisfaction and reward.
It was, yeah. Yeah, we did do actually 2000, when we launched into Whole Foods. I remember we had to finance our first production run. We did do something called a private placement. And that was one of my mentors at that time, Leeward Bean. He told me, he kind of really led that. And he said, it's friends, family, and fools who will jump in. So,
Sure.
so I have about 8 of my closest friends and then family who all put in a little check for a 1% share of the business at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, okay. I mean, great story.
Yeah.
So, as you're determining what products to expand and go into, I mean, what is the creative process like? I mean, how do you approach it?
Yeah, so we use data very closely now. So really understanding, where's their need in the marketplace for disruption? What are the certain categories that are kind of stale and boring, that are also filled with kind of other boring brands? And how can we, take the same approach that we did in salad dressings and pasta sauces and in condiments, and how do we start exploring other methods? So a new growth focus for us is actually pastas. So it's complementary, obviously,
Makes sense.
to our sauces, but instead of launching with another pasta that the world doesn't really need, we're focusing in on protein pastas. So
Okay.
it's made out of beans and water, and that's it. It's 18 grams of protein per serving. It tastes fantastic. We've been, for us, flavor first is everything. I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
a lot of natural foods, don't always taste good. So you will go to the store and you're all excited about being healthy, and then like you don't want to eat it because it doesn't taste good. But that flavor first approach is really, really important. And Gino, actually on our team, who leads West Coast sales, he's a former chef for many fine establishments here in Tampa Bay, and he's been leading our R&D efforts. But really, that flavor first approach has been taken a level up once he joined our team in 2022.
I love that approach. So my wife has a gluten intolerance,
Hmm.
so she will buy chickpea pasta.
Bonza. Yeah.
It's interesting because some of them, and I guess it's just the shape and
Hmm.
consistency, actually taste good. They taste normal,
Hmm.
and then there's some others that immediately I mean, I think the fettuccine noodles, maybe perhaps, maybe the spaghetti too. But I
Hmm.
remember the first time we served it to the kids, they're like, "What is this?
Yeah. Right.
This isn't like what kind of what are you feeding me? Like
Yeah.
you're trying to slip one past me." So I appreciate the flavor first
Absolutely.
approach. I'm going to ask you a question, and you can't answer like children. They're all my favorite. But do you have a favorite sauce, and or maybe a couple of your favorites? And to layer on top of that, what do you like to use it on?
Yeah, I love it. So I love to do a rosa sauce. So I'll take our marinara and then I'll take the Alfredo. I'll mix them both. And then I love seafood. So I put that on lobster ravioli. I put it
Ooh.
on mussels. I'll put it on fish. On our salad dressings, one of my personal favorite is the Asian sesame. It's fantastic. You could put it on, again, it's a versatile item. You could put it on fish. I use it for sushi. So I don't use soy
Interesting.
sauce. I
Okay.
use
All right.
our sesame, and it tastes amazing. You could do a
The
really
traditionalists are cringing right now, but
right,
that's
yeah, right. And then yeah, as far as the pasta sauces go, I mean the OG marinara is just
so good.
a go-to. And then you said it earlier, the spicy sauces are
Uh,
fantastic. I'm not too much of like a spicy person, but those who love spicy really love our buffalo sauces, our spicy Mary, and the spicy Alfredo has been growing a lot as well.
I have not tasted the buffalo, so
It's really good.
I'll have to
Yeah.
check that out. When do we get to see Yo Mama's ravioli?
I mean, come on over. You could see it. So our pastas will actually launch in March, and then we don't have plans for a ravioli now, but I just that's my kind of go-to. I go to Costco, get the lobster, and then I mix up the sauce and warm it up.
All right, good tip.
Yeah.
Him being have a culinary background. I mean, do
Mhm.
you is that kind of where you rely? Do you bring in chemists to like kind of understand the mix? I mean, you're using kind of simple natural ingredients, so I don't know if bringing a food engineer or chemical engineer is necessary. But is that part of the process too?
It is, yeah. So food is science. So
It is.
and there's a lot that goes into a packaged foods good before it can go on the shelf, from regulations to audits, which is all very, very good. That's, I think, going back to the early days of packaged foods in the early 1900s. That's where people are getting botulism and all
Yeah,
these.
yeah. Tuberculosis.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, because people didn't know, that there's a science behind food, and that, things can spoil and ultimately, do some serious damage, right? So for us, we work very closely with our packers on the R&D process. We work with SQF facilities only, and these are packers that ultimately have the highest auditing standards, and those are requirements when you're ultimately selling to these larger retailers like Costco and Walmart. But ultimately, by setting the standards as high as possible, that's step one. Step two, defining clear expectations. No preservatives ever. We're not allowed to use excess sugars. We're not allowed to use sodium. Only using ingredients that your mom has in her pantry is the easiest way that we like to explain it. Setting clear expectations on that then drives us to the R&D process, and that's where we start to utilize what we can. So for example, Alfredo sauce took us almost 2 years. We have three flavors launched a year ago. We have a classic Alfredo, spicy Calabrian, and a roasted garlic. And for years, we were going to different packers to try to find out a way to make the world's first clean Alfredo without the disodium phosphate
Mm.
or the phosphoric acid and the xanthan gum and all these things that, again, mom doesn't cook with. Very challenging to do. We're using fresh, heavy cream. You have to have some type of acid in there to ultimately balance it. We use lemon juice,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's how we were able to build.
Simple.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But on the production side, it's a very, very specific process to create it, and because we're not using emulsifiers like xanthan gum, we can't ultimately bind it in a normal way. So our production process is very specific into making that product viable for the ultimate end customer. But yeah, I mean, it's a journey. I think R&D is its own kind of animal, and ultimately for any person or company listening, it's really just about setting clear expectations. Staying true to your values is extremely important. It's very easy to cut corners, and everyone's going to tell you why you should, either to save cost or it's because everybody else is doing it. That's a perfect opportunity for you to stick to your guns and to ultimately, choose to go your own path, because ultimately that's how you're going to make something different.
I think that's a good sign when people are telling you no, or
Right.
it can't be done. That's probably the sign that you're doing something right.
For sure.
I want to ask you about the importance in your mind of teamwork and hard work, and one story in particular that you have shared about almost losing your entire warehouse staff.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be? And I guess maybe how did you rebuild? What lessons did you learn from that?
Yeah, so team is everything, and that other saying of culture eats strategy for breakfast is very accurate and true. I think when you're growing a business, you're constantly moving very very fast, but you're also trying to build a ship, right? So I tell people that we're on this boat and we're learning how to build the boat as we're trying to make it float. And that's really hard to do when you don't have the right team in place. So part of being a good leader, part of being a good captain of the boat is understanding who you should put on the boat and who needs to be thrown overboard. And I think that's a really important lesson that I had to learn the hard way, where sometimes I didn't react as quickly as I needed to. When there's a bad apple, and it truly does ruin the entire patch. And going through that in 2021, it was just, there was nothing wrong necessarily with our team. They just weren't the right fit with what we were trying to build. And we pretty much had to start from scratch in 2021, and that was a great lesson for me. But it also gave me a fresh start and gave me the ability to start designing and putting the right leadership, the right people in place, and most importantly, people that had much different skill set than what I had, and people that were a lot smarter than like I was too, right? So I think that's an important piece. Is you have to understand what you're good at, and you really have to determine what you're not good at, and you need to outsource that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, great advice.
Yeah,
And a lot of leaders, I think, their ego gets in the way and,
absolutely.
and can't see that.
Yep.
In terms of hiring, is there any particular best practices that you think are valuable to share?
Hire slowly and fire quickly.
Okay, all right, yeah.
If someone is not a good fit, you'll know. I have kind of three rules. Do they show up on time to a job interview, and do they show up early? I think that's extra. Do they follow up? And I really value references as well. So many of the times when we're interviewing candidates, they kind of weed themselves out, because follow up, as you know, Owen, is everything in business. And if someone really wants something, then they'll follow up. They'll say thank you, right? So we don't hire. Little trick of our rule book is we don't hire anyone who doesn't follow up with HR, with the actual manager who's hiring them, because for us, in our critical small business that we're trying to expand, follow up is everything, and that's
Mhm.
really a core piece of what we're building. So
Follow
yeah,
up, follow through.
that's right.
Here's a quote of yours that I love. Maybe not attributed to you, but you've used it, and I love
Yeah.
it. So no matter how talented the conductor is, there's no music without the orchestra.
Yep.
So tell me about that philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see any successful product or successful business, there is so much that goes behind it. And at the end of the day, people only see this finished good, right? So they see a nice clean jar. I can see all of the nice fresh onions in there. I see all of the spices. It's filled up perfectly. There's good caps on it. So, it's past quality, right? But there is so much design and thought and people behind that, to
Sure.
where you have the team of 50 who are making it, you have the operations who's building it, who's ordering it, you have the finance who's keeping it afloat, you have sales who's pushing it, you have marketing who's building a brand. So that saying of "it takes a village" is so relevant. And I think a lot of people can put a leader of a company on this kind of mantle. but ultimately it takes everybody, and it does take that village. So it's true. It's, no matter how talented you are or I am, we're nothing without our teams.
Yeah, it's so true.
And that's something that as you grow the business, you have to really be intentional about. Again, going back to building the right team, but you also have to be very strategic with delegating and making sure that things are done. And I've learned, it's very hard when it's your baby, to not want to do everything, but ultimately at the scale that we're at, there's no way that I can possibly do it. So you have to get very comfortable with delegation and very comfortable with the 80% rule of, if someone else can do it 80% of what I would do it, then that's going to be good enough. And that took years to build, but ultimately
It's an important lesson.
it is. And as a business owner, it's not fair to expect a team to work weekends and to work nights and to work evenings and to have the business on their mind all
Yeah,
the
it's not their
time.
company.
It's not
Right.
theirs, right? So I think that's a really important lesson for other business owners is, you will have those team members who are willing to do that, and who have skin in the game, and who are willing to come in and go the extra mile. But part of being a good leader is also letting people live and making sure that that they also have a good work-life balance, and that they're enjoying their PTO and spending time with their families and then kids too. So
Yeah.
a fine balance.
Sign of a good leader, David. So speaking of the 80-20 rule, I'm assuming you're not personally managing the digital channels.
I'm not, no.
But the TikTok team is
Yeah.
is pretty creative with the taste tests.
For sure.
You want to talk about some of those?
Yeah. So that's all led by Bryce, and there's so many different mediums and channels. I mean, we're on this amazing podcast, and that's the way that I think everything is democratized now. Like you don't need to pay $5 million for this ad campaign. You can create a really cool TikTok campaign, and it will do far more for the business than any type of ad will, right? So I think that content is king, and coming up with creative ideas and working with the team. I mean, I walked into the office last week, and they're like, "New Year sale is starting on the 1st. We need you to fall into your truck." And they filmed and they showed me what the video was, but they filmed this like video where I'm falling into the truck and then announcing something. So you'll just have to watch it. I don't know half of what I do whenever they tell me, but it's just fun. And then there was like a water, like I got a bunch of water dumped on me. There's like forklift challenges. There's a lot of fun things, but our team does a great job of kind of seeing what's trending, and most importantly, how do we create unique content that's not trending, and how do we kind of make our own voice out there.
No, it's creative. So I mean, kudos to them. They're doing a good job, and
Awesome.
and you for, I guess, having the courage and giving them the flexibility to kind of use that creative talent.
For sure.
So I guess maybe kind of wrap it up here a little bit. I mean, reflecting on your journey. I mean, if you could kind of summarize, some key lessons to aspiring entrepreneurs, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say I'd separate it into 3 buckets. Start small, think big, and scale quickly. And I cannot take credit for that. That's the Coca-Cola model. But something that was extremely relevant to us as we were building our business, and still is starting small is so important. Going back to the first run of sauces that we did, 84 cases of 12 packs, it wasn't millions of jars, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful. Well, one, we could never afford that, but 2, there was so much to learn, and there's always something to learn. To where starting small is the best approach. You don't need to, get the biggest, the best, the most expensive of anything. You just have to start small and then learn. Thinking big is really important. I think for us, we have a very clear intention of becoming a household brand name, and that's our mission, is to bring people around the table through healthy foods. And we want to be that brand that customers go to for cleaner, better for you sauces and dressings that most importantly taste good. So for us, that's our mission, that's our goal, and that doesn't stop. The business is a living, breathing thing. It's always moving, it's always growing. We're selling online, we're selling in different time zones. We're selling in 17 countries now. So that's a really exciting thing. But, you know, going back to starting in my parents' dining room on a 4-foot table, that was a very clear intention. I knew that we would do that one day, and I know that we're going to be much much larger too. But you have to have a clear path forward and really build the right team that will help you build those stepping stones. I think I'm too much, going back to strengths and then weaknesses here. I'm too much in like the air, where I'm like a dreamer, and I've built a phenomenal team that's very tactical and really able to kind of bring me down to earth and help me with what those stepping stones are. And then lastly, scaling quickly. If you're building a product-based business, especially within food, if it's clothing, if it's anything that's consumer packaged goods, scale is everything. You don't make a lot on one unit.
Right.
If you're selling candles, you may make $1 off of each candle, but if you sell 20 million candles, then you have a really strong business. So thinking about scale and thinking about distribution is very important, and really setting that clear intention. Do you want to be a small local brand? Do you want to be a small regional brand? Those are good. There are some strong businesses here in the Tampa Bay area that have this area really mastered, and I think that's an important philosophy. Is you don't have to be everything to everyone. You don't have to be the biggest business. You don't have to be the one that's doing the most revenue. If you're passionate and if you can do what you do well, then you'll be perfectly happy living and loving the journey.
17 countries, thousands of stores. If you're watching this or listening to this, if you haven't tried the sauces, they are amazing. So, David, anything else you want to share?
Oh, and thank you, and to the audience, thanks for listening. This is fun, and thanks for your partnership, and kudos to the Bank of Tampa team for sure.
Well, thank you, and you're very welcome. If people want to find you, where would you direct them to?
If you want to find our products, you can find us at your local Walmart, Publix, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Amazon. You can also find us online through Walmart.com, Sam's.com, Costco.com, YoMamasFoods.com, and you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you like.
All the socials. But David, thanks for coming on Money Market.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If you have a question or future show idea or would like to be a sponsor, you can send us a message at moneymarket@bankoftampa.com or find us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and on Instagram at Bank of Tampa and online at bankoftampa.com. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you around in the Money Market.